Hello silent observers, I'm Gabriele Chiapparini, welcome to Small Photobook Cult. After the four pillars and the community, the children's melody continues to tell us about communities and the need to belong. Chaotic images formed by multitudes of individuals contrast with the silent spaces where it's easy to imagine the sound, the smell, and their usual inhabitants. This project focuses on childhood and the institution designed to shape and transform it from unproductive magma into functional human beings. Welcome to the episode 55 of Small Photobook Cult. Here with us, Eli Durst. Hello Eli, I'm really glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk.
I'm a huge collector of your books, so...
Oh, thank you.
I want to start from the fact that the community, the four pillars, and now the children's melody. Is there a common thread linking these projects?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I'm an artist where I think this is not uncommon, to have central preoccupations, right? Central ideas or themes that are at the core of what you do, of what you're interested in. And then you kind of, at least my different bodies of work are just different ways of approaching that, different ways of getting at that. So I think in my mind, they're all very connected in a thematic way. I think stylistically they change. And I think kind of how I'm operating, the types of genres I'm referencing or subverting, I think that changes. And I'm happy to go into depth about that. So to me, they're absolutely connected.
And what do you think is this central interest that you have in all your projects?
I think my main interests are sort of social forces, how social forces shape us, right, into who we are, and the damage that does to us, but also what we stand to gain from that, right? Like why we give up parts of ourselves to belong. The pleasure of belonging to something larger than yourself, but also what you have to give up and sort of the effect or damage that has on individuals.
Then we can start speaking about this specific book. And the first question, we need to know what sparked this project. And in the meanwhile, I can start flipping through the books if it's okay for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the children's melody, again, it's connected to what I'm doing. I sort of narrowed my focus to young people, which I'm defining as, kindergarten, which is like, 5 years old through university. And, that's significant because there are those times when individuals are still very connected to institutions, right? Whether it's school or church or a sports team or a dance class, you're still very connected to these institutions that shape you, and these institutions have a goal, right, or a mission of taking sort of the raw chaos of a human being and shaping it into some sort of member of a society, a citizen, someone who belongs, right, someone who has some kind of shared identity, and so young people was, it was really rich territory because, as we get older, our personalities, our identities, they sort of calcify, right? We become more confident in who we are. With young people, I feel like they're so often, there's a generalization, of course, but they're just more open. They're more earnestly, sincerely engaged with trying to figure out who they are, like where they fit into the world, what kind of person they are, how they should act or behave, right? How they should perform their identity. And I just feel like as a photographer, right, the challenge is not just thinking about these ideas, but how do you visualize them? How do you find them in the world pictorially? And for me, young people were such a just, it was just so clear, this process that they were going through.
Despite the idea of documenting a context, the use of harsh, focused light also creates space for fiction, let's say. What role does the flash play in your photography, and especially in this project? Flash or a specific, pointing lights?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say there are two sort of the most sort of salient technical features are one, the black and white, and two, the flash. And I think what they both do is like, hopefully they wrench the images away from reality, right? It's very harsh light often. It's very unusual light. It's not naturalistically, rendered. And my hope is that it allows viewers to see these things in a new way, right? Most of the things I'm photographing are extremely mundane, right? It's like a school recital or this is a church service, a youth group. They're things that are just very mundane, very ordinary looking. And hopefully, the way the flash is used, it's so different from how we see the world, right? It doesn't look anything like the space in real time. And I hope that allows viewers, I hope it defamiliarizes the spaces. So it allows viewers to look at them like, oh my God, how strange this is. The Boy Scouts are so strange. How bizarre is cotillion? So this is an image of cotillion, which is, where you learn manners, like how to dance and like how to do the Charleston and how to use your fork, and so hopefully the flash allows you to really see something in a new way. That's my hope, at least.
Is it because you need the viewer, the people, to stop 1 second and try to, let's say, put themselves in a different position from what they usually are used to see?
Yeah, I think, if you were to wander into some of these spaces when I'm photographing, it would just look so normal, in color with tungsten or fluorescent light. Like it would just look totally everyday, insignificant, right? And I think the flash allows you, or hopefully allows you, to sort of see something for how strange it is, or it just creates a break with reality. There's a sort of violence to it, right? It just no longer looks like the world you're used to seeing, right? And so hopefully it feels, as you sort of said, a space for fiction, right? Hopefully it allows you to sort of imagine that this is another version of our world in some way.
So in this picture, we can see a bit of your setup for this
exactly.
Picture. And
exactly. You can,
and it's quite massive.
Yeah. So I have two, like, not to get too, technical, but I have two Profoto lights with umbrellas, and you can see them in the mirror, which of course is like sort of wrong, right, to show the flash. But I like sort of being open about what I'm doing and what I'm adding to the scene, and the idea that these images are based in the real world. Like these are real cheerleaders at a high school here in Austin, Texas, but it's my point of view. It's my perception. It's my subjective view of the world, right? It's like, I want to say something. I'm trying to tell a story with these bits of the real world.
Yeah, it's also really interesting the fact that you declare from the start almost of the book that what you're going to see, it's in some part, it's fiction. Like you are portraying something that is, as you said, completely natural and normal, but you add this layer of fiction.
Absolutely. The way I think about it in my mind is like you read, if an essayist or a writer goes and observes something, right, and then writes, they visit Bologna and they write their point of view about Bologna. Of course, the input, the data, right, is based in reality, but of course it's their own perception, it's their own ideas, it's filtered through their own consciousness, right? They're trying to tell you something about the world as they see it. And to me, that I feel like that's what I'm doing. I mean, I am interested in the world. I'm interested in people outside of my own consciousness. But of course, these are my ideas about them.
Why for this chapter was it important for you to focus on young people and the education system? And what do you think it was the main focus of the other project? And how? Sorry, too many questions. Let's stop here for now.
Yeah. Well, so this photograph that we're looking at, this was actually made at the elementary school that I went to from when I was 5 to when I was 12. And I thought about, it was always very appealing to me to return there to take pictures, because it's just like how much of me, right, of who I am is a result of these places, of these teachers, of this curriculum, right, of the government saying what you can or should teach, right? Like how much of me, is just a result of sort of this institutional influence. And, I think the cynical point of view is that this is sort of programming. It's indoctrination, right? You're indoctrinated into a certain system and society. And I think there's absolutely truth to that. I think the more optimistic side is you're creating, you're learning some kind of collective identity, right? You're becoming a part of a group, right? How can you have a society without some sort of shared, system of values or ideas? So a picture like this. So this is rehearsal for a play at this school, and so they're all on risers, and it's sort of like a stepped kind of ladder system. And they're supposed to be singing, and they're supposed to be doing a choreography, like a kind of movement with their hands. And I just liked how incredibly chaotic it is, right? How you see like some people are doing the choreography, some people are singing, other people are just going, completely rogue and doing what. And the pictures with the youngest people, they're much more chaotic formally, right? They haven't that process of molding, of shaping, of uniformity that you see later, especially with like the military students, like it hasn't happened yet, right? That process it's much earlier on in that process.
And why now?
Why now make the work?
Yeah.
Well, I think, if you're aware of what's going on in the United States of America, it's,
it's perfect timing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's really scary. I mean, you think about, a government saying, these are the things you can teach, these are the things you can't teach, these are the words you can use, these are the ideas that you can express and the ones you can't express. I mean, it's really scary. It's really, really scary. And I think it's made me very cognizant of what am I teaching? I mean, I'm a professor, right? At the University of Texas. Like, what am I passing down? And I also have 2 kids, and I think about that a lot too. Like, what kind of behaviors or ideas am I modeling, right? And what's the impact of what I do or what I say? And I think I mean, there's always, no matter who's in charge, questions of conformity, shame, right? Indoctrination. But now it's just it's so unapologetic. It's so upfront. It's so blatant. And I think it runs counter to, a lot of the values, right? My, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, creativity, and, the ability to explore or challenge ideas or think critically. So I think it's really scary. The United States right now is really scary.
Is there also like the option to move the money for education to private school and
yeah so public school systems in the country and in Austin, Texas, where I live, are in danger because a lot of the taxpayer money gets funneled out of them into private institutions, and they're called charter schools. And the argument is like, oh, these charter schools can address issues with public education. Certainly public education has problems, but the result has been sort of a hollowing out of the funding. So then, of course, public schools, don't perform as well. And that's presented as proof of like, oh, look, they're failing. But really, their issues are often because of the funding is being pulled, right, by these very schools. So it is something that is a big issue. And I think one with potentially really dire consequences. Because, in any society, if you defund or hollow out the education system, you're going to just create problems for generations and generations.
Are there any photographers who inspired you or who have inspired you?
Absolutely. I would say one of my biggest is Chris Killip, the English photographer. I think In Flagrante 2 is sort of like, for me, it's just a perfect photography book. And I think the way it blends, social history, political history, right? But also humanism and a focus on individuals, right? And the way that individuals sort of bear the brunt of these larger political, social decisions, like, and the way that those decisions become sort of ingrained within the landscape. I think that was a huge influence. Dina Lawson is also, like, I'm a huge fan of her work. One thing, do you know Richard Avedon's murals? That I love that work. And I'm sort of obsessed with those photos. And I think that was a big influence on me because you might be able to tell from a purely formal point of view, I love pictures with lots of people.
Yeah.
I just love trying to get as many people into a frame as possible. I know that sounds stupid or basic, but like I just love the pictures where you just look at them and there's so much to do and the pictures hold your attention. And it's, I could talk all about the thematic ideas, the themes, the metaphors, but part of it is just like I just enjoy pictures with lots of people, with lots of things happening. And so that work by Abaddon has always been I've just absolutely loved it. And I think, not to sound too like an old grumpy old man, but I think Instagram has really changed what people expect from pictures, and how most images look. And I think it's made pictures simpler, it's stripped them down, and they're often the way we interact with photographic imagery. If it's on Instagram, it's you need to understand it instantly. And to me, I've always been drawn to pictures that just reveal themselves more slowly, that you need to spend time with or think about, or pictures that like you might look at it and decide you have no fucking idea what it means, and I feel like with the internet and social media, it's like that's just really changed how people experience or look at imagery.
Yeah, you like pictures with a lot of people on it, or without no one.
Yeah.
Because you have also a lot of just location that probably helps you with the context of the book, but also I feel in this kind of images that you put inside the book that there is more space for the viewer for put himself inside the place, or at least in a different way from the one with a lot of people.
Yeah. And can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So when an Italian, looks at a picture like this, like what, because for me, creating this context or the setting is really important. And a lot of them are these very sort of like prototypically American spaces. And I'm curious, like when you look at this space, like how you read it, how you interpret it.
Like it doesn't exist a space like this one in Italy, for example. Probably all the knowledge that I have about these places are from movies.
Yeah.
But yes, it's super hard. Like I can, like there are a lot of symbols inside. There is a cross, there is a guitar and a kind of small stage, and there is a space for a lot of people. So I think also if you are from somewhere else, you can feel it.
Yeah. So I'm always just so curious because so much of my work is sort of based around sort of these like, American spaces or ideas or values. And I'm always really curious how people, from other countries interpret it. This is like a church summer camp, which is like very common in the US, especially in the South. There'll be like a summer camp with swimming and singing and a dining hall. So I think the pictures without people, the settings, the spaces are characters within the work. And I think, hopefully they have that feeling of something very both specific, right, and American, but also kind of universal or ubiquitous, right? They're not super specific spaces. They could kind of be anywhere in the U.S.
I experienced places like this one when I was a kid. I used to go in this thing of in summer with the church, and of course, like the place was completely different, like completely. Yeah. But let's say the position of the items inside this picture is almost the same. You have a kind of stage or a place where the tutor go, and a lot of space for the young kids to stay together and listen to the tutor. So it's different, but it's the same, to be honest.
Yeah. I was gonna say one thing, I obviously love about Italy is how beautiful it is, how beautiful spaces are. But photographically, one thing I love about photographing in, the US or in Texas is like how ugly the spaces are, how sort of built, how sort of kind of generic, like there's a sort of ugliness that's very appealing to me photographically.
To be honest, I think you need to be an amazing photographer for taking pictures in Italy in specific places, because it's really easy to start to make pictures of beautiful spaces, but I think it's not easy to avoid the the beauty that you can find somewhere. They push you, let's say, in a specific spot, in a specific way of taking pictures. And I know really few photographers that are able to take great pictures in these beautiful spaces. I think it's super, super hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Like in a picture like this, I can imagine probably, I don't know if is it the only one that you took there, or you have several others from different perspective?
Yeah, there aren't that many from this space. I have 2 images in the book that were from this day, but one was in like more of the sanctuary space, and this is the only one. And then I photographed it with people, and they're eating their food because it was just like lunch. This is like the cafeteria, right? But to me, I much preferred the image when it was empty and just that sort of stillness, sort of glow, especially because so many of the pictures are so busy that I think, we were discussing like how you need those in between pictures. You need, one thing I think a lot with sequence and edit is just pace and rhythm and giving the viewer a break or a pause. And I think the images without people help do that.
Yeah, I agree. No, I ask that because I can imagine you working around inside this space and try to find a point of view that works. And probably in this kind of spaces, there are a lot of point of view that can work. Then you choose your specific point of view. I think in Italy sometimes you are a bit forced to I don't know, to one, two.
Absolutely. The space, the design dictates a certain experience, a certain point of view. Absolutely.
A lot. But I love when I can see someone able to break that rules. It's super hard, but I love it.
Yeah.
Eli, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that in your latest projects, the formal construction of the images has given away a bit to a more, I don't know, like chaotic or spontaneous interpretation. Do you think that is right or not?
Yeah, I think so. I have published 3 books, right? And the community, the first book, it's much more indebted to sort of a documentary style. I don't believe in the idea of documentary photography or that photographs are documentary or reflect reality, really. But it was sort of the style, it was the look, right, of the pictures. And then for my second book, The 4 Pillars, that was mostly made during COVID when I couldn't really work in this way, right? Which is like going into rooms with strangers, a bunch of people. And so the pictures are more cinematic, they're more staged, they're more controlled. And I think for me, I don't know if anyone else thinks this or this is clear to anyone else, but for me, this book is sort of the melding. It's sort of those 2 ways of working coming together, where the pictures are much more spontaneous. They're much more made in the world. But hopefully there's a level of control, like technically the lighting, the setup, that makes them hopefully feel very more cinematic, right? Or just more directed or more formally resolved in some way, a little bit less like messy in a way. So hopefully, I guess they feel chaotic, but not messy, busy, but not sloppy in some sense.
No, I agree. Like the feeling is exactly that one. There is some chaos inside. And of course, you can see your point of view also in this one. You can see, you frame it. But then there is these curtains that it's, why is in this way and what is this? Is it a screen? What?
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
No, it's, there is always something that make me feel that there is something wrong, something not in the right place. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah. The way I work, it's, I go into these spaces. So this is for cotillion, where it's like a formal sort of dinner kind of thing. And, so there's a certain level of control I have, right? Where I put my lights, how I direct people, where I ask them to stand. But you're also at the mercy of the world, right? And it's like, these are sort of like rec centers, you know what I mean? They're like public, they're like used for different purposes. So there's just a giant screen on the wall. And, as opposed to sort of designing that out, right? Or like that's not clean enough, trying to embrace that, right? And, especially images of the really young kids, like the one we discussed where they're all sort of singing and kind of doing the choreography, you just have to give up control. That's a photo of like, 50 8-year-olds, 8-year-olds don't give a shit about your art project. 8-year-olds truly do not care. Like it is just chaos, and you have to respond to what they're doing, versus the images like, these are older, young men where they understand, right? They're more orderly. They understand what they need to do for this performance, right? Or especially the individuals who are in the military, they're in what's called ROTC, which is like sort of, it's not the real military, but it's sort of like it's like pre-military for like high school or college kids. They know exactly what they're supposed to do, right? They understand the parameters of the performance to a T, and they'll give you that, right? So I think hopefully there's an interesting sort of give and take, right? Between people resisting, right, the performance, and then but then people buying into it as well.
How did you organize the process, and how did you choose where and what to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, it happened pretty organically. I wish I could say I had some like master plan, or that I was an artist sort of capable of doing that. But to me, it just happened much more organically. And this was never a project I really set out to make. I mean, I never sort of thought consciously like, oh, I'm going to do a project about young people until pretty far into the process. I mean, even when I was sort of at the beginning stages trying to articulate this, and people would ask me what I was photographing, I'd like young people, and it almost sounded stupid to me. Like it sounded so basic. It sounded conceptually unsophisticated, right? But I was just, I think, as I mentioned before, it's like I'd photograph, a dance rehearsal, or I'd photograph a Boy Scout meeting, and just the kind of earnestness, which with these young people were trying on different identities, trying to become different versions of themselves. Like it was so apparent, it was so palpable in ways that I think with adults, it's not as clear. Adults are sort of more fixed, right? They're comfortable, they're confident. That's a good thing. But with young people, there's more of an experimentation with like, who do I want to be, right? And the work, it's called the Children's Melody. It's all about how we both learn and internalize identity, collective identity, ideas about how we should be, what we value. But then it's also about how we then perform that back out. Most of the pictures portray performances in some way, or rehearsals, right? And the idea is that we embody these ideas and then we perform them back for the world, right? And then our identity is sort of constructed within that, right? It's not enough just to learn the things, you then have to perform them outwardly, right? As sort of proof of who you are. And so that's why so many of these pictures have stages or performances or practices and rehearsals, because it's all about sort of how that gets performed back to the world.
When did you decide the title?
So, for title, I feel like titles are so hard, and they're so important. And I always tell my students, don't try to think about a title before you do the work. But I have to say, honestly, like I was thinking about the title for years, and it's just so important. And I was actually reading a book by Evan Osnos about China, about sort of China in the 20th century, and 21st century, and he used a phrase that the Communist Party uses called the central melody. And the idea is that all Chinese life has to have some sort of central melody, and that, you can deviate a little bit, right? You can have a solo, you could have, change the key or something. You can have a little bit of variation, but it still has to adhere to a central melody, right? You can't go too far, right? If you go too far, you challenge the system, you challenge the values, and you get punished, right, in some way. And so I that just clicked with me, and obviously I changed it to the Children's Melody. But I really liked the idea of applying like a term from the Chinese Communist Party to life in America, life in Texas, because especially conservative, America thinks about itself. The Chinese Communist Party is like the ultimate evil, Like we think about ourselves as the opposite of everything they do. And I was thinking about how connected that actually is, and how as individualistic as America like wants to see itself, like how desperate we all are to belong to something. Everyone wants to belong to something, right? Is what I think.
Yeah. And how did you work with the protagonist of the pictures?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really depends. I mean, if we go back to the image, Gabriele, of the like all the kids on the risers singing and dancing that we discussed, that's, or is it? There we go. Yeah. Like that's an instance where it's like, that is me observing, really. Like, I have no control over them. Like I could ask them to do something and they're not going to do it. They don't give a shit, right? And so that is where I'm really observing, and I'm moving my lights to create different effects. And, that song they were singing was probably 3 minutes long. So, to me, I see it as problem solving. It's like I have 3 minutes to figure out how to resolve this picture, how to make a good picture of this moment, versus images with single people or portraits where, I have a lot more interaction with the people being photographed. But again, this one really, like, they were learning a dance. And they were all in their ready positions. And I just said, oh, hey, hold that for 1 second. And so some of it really is sort of an instantaneous reaction. And then others are a little bit more, staged, a little bit more set up in some way. But, often when like this picture is a great example. So this was a cheerleader. They were getting ready for their football game. And I liked how she was sort of mostly ready, but you could see from her shoes and socks, she wasn't fully in her uniform. And so, I just asked her, like, would you, could I take a portrait of you, and set her up against this sort of white curtain. And I just liked how it was the performance, like she was almost ready, but not quite. But also how this was like a very small young woman. This is the person they like throw up in the air, in the cheerleaders. But how incredibly tough she looked, because I think the book is about, the social pressures, the things we project onto young people and the effect that has. But it's also about how they resist, right? How they resist a society's notions, right? How they might challenge it or subvert it, right? How they are individuals with their own ideas and agency and power. And, it's an incomplete sort of indoctrination.
Yeah, still, I agree. And I really love this aspect that you can also in the previous pictures that, as you said, you were mostly documenting what was happening. But you have the girl on the left that is a bit out of the scene watching at you.
Yeah, looking, making eye contact with me.
Yeah, it's a bit like she's not inside the group of people. She took a moment for herself, and I love it.
And this is when I show this image in exhibitions, I print it I print it 30 by 40 inches. Sorry, I need to figure out the centimeters.
Yeah,
I know inches are ridiculous and stupid, but it allows you to sort of scrutinize every person. And there are some really, really nice, like, I just like the idea that you could look at this picture, at a large scale and sort of discover something, right? Find something you didn't immediately notice before. There's the girl in the middle to the right, sort of vertically, she's in the middle, but she's almost to the edge on the right and she's looking right at me. And, that was one thing. Yeah, exactly. And that, that was one thing that I hated at first. In my earlier books, my first 2 books, there's no one looking at the camera, because I wanted to have that sort of cinematic illusion. But this, it's like I couldn't control it. I couldn't control all these kids. And I think at first that was an anxiety. I saw that as a shortcoming. And then I learned to sort of embrace it and just think about that not as a problem, but just as a character of the work and something to sort of embrace the actual situation.
Yeah, with this kind of pictures, you really have... I agree with you of the fact that you need to watch this kind of pictures in a big print on a wall, because you can really wander with your mind watching all these kids. Each one, as you said at the start, there is still more individualism.
Yeah,
you can see the one in the center that it's what.
Yeah.
What is she doing? Like it's.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, there are just so many. I just love their expressions, and it's just the eye lines, like where they're looking. It's like you have kids who are some are clued into what's going on, and some are just have no interest in participating.
And you have this huge contrast with this kind of images.
Yeah. So this is the ROT. This is military. This is like a student at University of Texas on the left, and his sort of, I don't know, I guess ranking officer on the right. But it's just the perfect haircut, right? No hair out of place. The military is sort of it's the apotheosis. It's sort of the pinnacle of that idea of order and uniformity, and the sacrificing of an individual identity, right, for the sake of a group.
Yeah, uniform, it means just one thing, like uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
There is this, I don't know if it's the same also in English, but in Italy it's really weird because we have two words that you can use for uniform. And one is divisa, that I don't know if there is the correspective word in English. And the other one is uniform. The interesting aspect is that divisa, it means exactly the opposite. It's something divided. And uniform, it means something uniform, something.
Yeah.
So I still have to read something about it because it's so
That's
weird.
amazing.
It is.
I would love to hear more about that.
It is, because of course uniform, it works better for military. But divisa, I still have to understand why.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love uniforms, right, in my photos, like whether it's military or just Boy Scouts or, for a dance recital, right? Like this one is like an Irish dance contest, but I just love uniform, the idea that you put on a certain outfit, right? And suddenly your identity changes, right? Suddenly you understand yourself differently, right? When you put on a suit, when you put on military fatigues, like you understand who you are in a very different way, right? It has an effect on your understanding, your self-understanding. And I also like the idea of when a uniform is a costume, like a uniform is something that's sort of like, it's more connected to you, and a costume feels like something you're putting on. It's not real. It's like a Halloween costume, right? And I like the idea that like a uniform could feel like a costume, or a costume could sort of become a uniform in a way.
Yeah. We met a guy going through Stromboli some weeks ago in the train. We have this guy in front of me for 3 hours, and he was in the military and he was 18. So I just listened again the episode with Jason Coxbold, and I was not able to watch a team without thinking about all the question arise during that episode. And
sorry, keep going. Go ahead.
He was coming back home because he was sick. But I think there is a rule that when you leave the place where you used to train, in that trip, you still need to have the uniform. Then you can leave the uniform when you arrive at home. But when you, for example, came back to the place, you need to wear the uniform from the starting point of your trip. And this is really cool.
I just love that kind of stuff. Like, it's so strange and it's so abstract and it's so bizarre, and that we create these rules, right? About like, this is when, like, why do we do that? Like, what is behind that, right? And I think it's this sort of, anxiety about, kind of a policing of people in a way, right? You need to wear this, you're a representative of this. And, Jason Coxwell's book, Engage and Destroy, obviously I love that book, and I think it's very connected to
I love it.
What I'm doing here, just on a more, he's obviously narrowing his focus to a small subsect of people. I first started photographing ROTC because, we have a program here at the university where I teach, and I teach at 8 a.m. in the morning, which is way too early, but I'd get to school at like 7 a.m. to open up the lab in the dark room, and there'd be these students like in their outfits, sprinting, running, carrying things, and I was just blown away by that sort of that like dedication and that commitment. And they're wearing the uniforms, and how it might unite them, but it also totally sets them apart from all the other students here.
Yeah. Also, the guy in the train, he was really proud about the uniform.
Yeah.
So probably it's a different level of, you need to be really committed to choose to join the military.
Yeah. I think that's like when you put on a uniform, whether it's like the military, or like, like you're, performing a concert. It's like you put on that outfit, and it sort of changes you, right? You behave differently, you walk differently, you hold yourself differently, your posture's different. I just think it's interesting how just wearing a different set of clothes can change your expectations, your ideas about who you are.
Yeah, I agree. How did the project's focus evolve over the several years you work on it?
Yeah, I think, also, I feel like I didn't answer your question earlier about how I started photographing young people, but, it really started just like I photographed, I wanted to photograph at my elementary school, the school I went to. So I worked on, getting permission, getting releases. It's really challenging because they're minors, or under 18. And then it was like, okay, that was really interesting, but like, I'd love to photograph more within like a church setting, a Bible study, right? And then I would do that. And then I would think, okay, cotillion, right? Learning manners, learning this sort of traditional, very conservative kind of European idea about how to dress. So it really, I think, I didn't have some sort of overarching idea, really. I think it was just curiosity. Like, what is a space I want to see? And I think for me, what I love about photography, I think at a fundamental level, is just that it just rewards a certain curiosity. Like, it just like, I mean, I really think like when I take pictures, like I'm just drawn to things like I want to see. And most of these places are not places I would ever be, right? Especially as an adult. Or there's spaces like I don't know anything about the military. I don't know anything about cotillion or church Bible study. And just like a curiosity about like, what does this place look like? What do these people do? Why do they do it? What is meaningful about this to people? And I think, I hope you see in the pictures like a certain empathy, a curiosity and empathy versus a sort of, judgment. Obviously, photography can become very judgmental very quickly. But just like a genuine interest in how other people navigate the world.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't see too much a kind of criticism. Like I feel the picture's really open.
Yeah,
I think it's more something that the viewer can do, probably.
That's what I hope, and that's what I love. That's the type of work that I love, and the type of work I hope to create. Right? I think the more obvious the pictures become, the less interesting they become. I mean, I think kind of fundamentally, like in my photos, there is a social critique, a critique of this society at large, but not necessarily of the individuals in the pictures, right? Like these are real individuals, real human beings who, like maybe the American military is like a symbol of really damaging, problematic things, right? But I'm interested in what happens when that real individual, right, that student puts on that uniform, and then they become an embodiment of these larger values or ideals, but yet they're still an individual. Like the guy you saw on the train, like that's still, some young person who was sick and going to home visit his family. You know what I mean? Like what happens when the real individual intersects with these larger archetypes? So I guess hopefully you can see maybe a sort of critique of social forces writ large, but also an empathy or an understanding for the individuals who sort of occupy these roles.
This is also why I spoke, for example, 3 hours with this guy. Probably in the end, he thought I was a huge supporter of the military. It's possible because I asked so many things, but I was honestly curious about his choice.
Absolutely. I mean, I think photography, it's not that different. Like a genuine curiosity about why people live certain ways, and the effects of that.
And Eli, what about the performance? Because you decide to portray a lot of performative situation, but there is also, I think, this theme of performance that is something really inside our society, especially at that age.
Yeah. So, I mean, most of the things I'm photographing, there's some connection to performance. And I personally am much more drawn to sort of like the rehearsals, right? The early stages, when you're learning the performance, when it hasn't quite been perfected. And the idea is, that's sort of a stand-in or a manifestation or representation, I should say, of of how we're constantly performing our own identity, right? I mean, and my point of view and the sort of book's point of view is that identity is not fixed. There is not some true version of, who you are, right? It's this sort of constant navigation performance, right? And absorption of values, but then also a sort of, reflecting that back outward, right? Signaling that back outward, of how you want people to perceive you, what you want people to think of you, right? So it's this sort of, you're sort of constantly doing this work, right? And so anyway, that's sort of the idea and the connection to performance is that, a collective identity has to be maintained, has to be performed, right? That's why we have rituals. That's why we have, yearly holidays and parades. And, it's like this sort of constant work of affirming. And then, of course, that becomes a battleground, right? That becomes a battle for like, well, who are we, right? Obviously, Trump has a very different idea than I do, right? Of like who we are or who we should be, or what are the good things about this country and what are the bad things, right? So it's also sort of a fight between people, right? What are things that get celebrated and, what are things that get forgotten or ignored? And, I don't know if you're aware or familiar with the sort of battle over like Columbus Day in the US.
No.
So, we have this national holiday, Columbus Day, right? Which recently, scholars and, indigenous activists have sort of been like, well, we shouldn't have a holiday about someone who, right, committed a genocide against Native populations. And so like the Biden administration recognized Indigenous Peoples Day. And then now, of course, Trump is like trying to get rid of that and reestablish Columbus Day because that version of America is more suited to his point of view, right? Sure. About what this country means. And so it's sort of this like constant sort of, there's this ideological battle that happens, right? But it happens in real people, right? Real individuals, real young people become the sort of site of this battle. And you see that over in the fight for like curriculum, like what we're allowed to teach and what we're not allowed to teach, right? So it's like the young people who actually, absorb this kind of damage.
Yeah, I really like these pictures because you have almost everything, like everything you need from the project. You have these squads everywhere. You have this kind of, remember that you can be better, especially together. Then you have a proper picture of a performance, but also you have this fight because there is a spirit star of the week that is Gianna. She's probably from Italy, like the father, because of Gianna. Probably close to my city, Gianna.
Yeah. No, there's a competition. There's a hierarchy, right? But also, I also loved how it's like, why don't the other 4 squads have photos? Like what happened to the other squads? They've been vanished. They've been disappeared. And also on the background, you can see like people have kind of like sort of like a fabric-y material. So people were sort of like scratching their names into the background, which I thought was interesting. But
like
I like that.
A small act of rebellion.
Exactly. Some sort of tag or mark making or like, I'm not the spirit star of the week, but like, I want you to recognize me in some way,
Yeah.
Do you guys have stuff like this in Italy? Like cheerleaders, school dancers, like all this kind of stuff?
No, like probably some school has it, but coming from the idea of US, but no, normally not. And also, I think in Italy, I don't know in Europe, but I think in Europe, and I can speak better about Italy, there is also, let's say, less competition. With a lot of my friends from US, it's really funny to ask to these friends, like, was you a cool guy or not? That is something that almost doesn't exist in Italy. Like exists, of course. Also, in my class, we had the super beautiful guy and the super beautiful girls. But I think it's a different concept. Like, I think it's quite different. And I'm really curious about it, to be honest.
I think I love hearing like what your reaction to this, because it is so specific. But, this is a core part of the work, is the idea of an archetype, right? The cool guy, the high school quarterback, right? The athlete, the jock, the cheerleader, the weirdo, the hipster, right? The people who fit the mold, the people who occupy sort of the center, and the people who occupy the margins, the people who feel rejected, right? It's like this constant thing of like, how much do I give up of myself to be part of something versus like, how much do I rebel? What do I reject? And these types are so present in America, or at the very least in American media, in movies, TV shows, like, almost to the point of farce or parody. You see these archetypes.
Yeah, they exist also in Italy. I don't want to say that they don't exist here. They exist 100%. I think probably in a slightly different way, especially when I was a kid. Right now, I think it's more close to everywhere, probably.
Yeah.
Like to everywhere with a television, let's say, or an internet connection.
Yeah. I think the world has gotten more similar. Things have gotten much more similar than the way it used to be.
Eli, so you had Morel, Loose Joint, and GNOMIC.
Yeah.
How was your experience, and what changing the publishing house?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think people are sometimes curious because I have published 3 books with different publishers, and I think that the conventional wisdom is like you find one publisher and then you just publish with them over and over again, right? Like a director, like Martin Scorsese directing DiCaprio or De Niro, right? Where it's like you build this relationship and then you just keep working together. And I absolutely see the value in that and the benefit. But for me, I look at Morel's books, Loose Joints books, and GNOMIC's books, and I love them. I'm a huge consumer of photography books myself, right? Like I'm just a fan. And I looked at all their books and I love their books and I love what they do. And to me, like my dream would be to do a book with like every publisher I really like. And like, how is each one going to be different? And how, you work with publishers that you trust and that you admire. And so like when I'm working with Jason for GNOMIC, it's like, I love GNOMIC's books. I love their point of view. I'm curious to see what he's going to do, what we're going to do together. Right. And with each of these books, I feel like we made something, different that I only would have made with that publisher. And so for me, I learned so much from each one and I'm super grateful. And I'm just sort of curious. Like I want to work with other publishers too, and I want to see what they would do with my work. And I guess that's sort of just the collaborative part, right? When you make a photo book, and this obviously as a connoisseur, it's like there's the work and then there's the photo book, and they're different things, right? Like the photo, there's so much of what makes the book is the design, the edit, the sequence, right? How that book enters the world. Like it is its own sort of thing. And I think, the best publishers, they have an identity, they have a point of view, and, they have, maybe like a program, and it's like you fit into that in some way. And so I just think I learned so much from Morel, Loose Joints, and GNOMIC, and I'm really grateful.
Who's going to be the next one?
I don't know. There are a bunch of publishers that I really admire, and I have to make some more work before I start thinking about that. But I don't know. I just feel like there was a time 10, 12 years ago where it just seemed like, there was Mac and there were a few other places, but it was like, I don't know. I feel like now there's like there are just so many interesting places like doing interesting stuff. And I don't know. I think it's really exciting, to go to these fairs and go to these booths and look at the work and think about the points of view of these different publishers. No,
it is. I agree. This is why I spend a lot of money in the photo book fairs.
Oh, I know. Way too much money. I mean, that's the problem. It's like, it's way too much money.
Yeah. Do you have a specific music that you suggest us to listen while watching this book?
Yeah, I was thinking Fugazi, 13 songs. Do you know Fugazi?
Yeah, I love it. I love the band. I grew up with that music.
Yeah, they're just, incredible. But also I think the work, it's all, obviously punk is so much about, questions of conformity and resistance and agency and belonging to something, right? A punk community. Punk is so much about community, but also rejecting things as well, things that don't serve you. And it's just fucking amazing music as well.
Yeah, this is also why I love so much GNOMIC book, because it remembers me a label from the 90s of, that kind of punk label that you used to have in the 90s. Like, for example, the label of the singer of Fugazi, Ian McKay. That was Discord. And all the bands were completely different. Karate, I don't know if Karate was, probably it was Discord, I don't remember, but you had all these different bands playing different music, but in the end there was a thread connecting all the bands, that it was the urgency of speaking about something, that it wasn't not working. And I love this aspect that I can find in Jason's, in GNOMIC books, that all are connected in some ways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Do you learn something during this process of making this project that can help other photographers?
Yeah, I think, and this is just sort of how I feel in general about photography, or really good photography that I like, is that you have to let yourself follow the work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't pre-engineer what it's going to be. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go photograph this. Boom, boom, boom. You do it. And it's like, so what? You just ended up with exactly what you already thought you knew, right? And I think the work that I really admire, it's like you have to follow the work. You have to let the photos take you somewhere that you didn't know you were going to go. Because I think that is the work that feels discovered. It didn't feel like something that, it didn't just reaffirm things you already thought. It actually taught you something. I think the best work like teaches you something.
Yeah, so be open to the inconvenient. That can also
and change and get derailed and follow another a tangent or something. Like, be willing to go somewhere you didn't know you were going to go, or that you didn't know existed.
And can you suggest us a book or more than one to have here in the podcast in the future?
Yeah. Do you know Ian Klein's photography? He's a young photographer, amazing photographer. He's worked a lot with like Jason. Yeah, Kline. He's worked a lot with like Jason Nacito. I don't know if you know his work, but he releases these sort of like limited edition books, and I think they're amazing. I think they're just so cool. I love his imagery, and I think he'd be a really interesting person to have a conversation with. I think that would be awesome. I was also thinking Andrea Modica. Modica, do you know her work?
Yeah, I know, and it's possible because there is a book from Lartiere, and Lartiere is here in Bologna.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was thinking that would be perfect because she's amazing and Italian American, obviously, but she's just, I think, someone who's an incredible photographer, and I think you look at some of her work, and you can probably see that it's had an influence on me for sure.
Yeah, I understand why.
Did she do the Catholic girls' work with Lartiere?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously love that work. So.
Yeah, I love it too. So that can be really interesting to speak about that work. Also because I think it's a work from the 90s, the 80s?
I think it's mostly 80s, and maybe some. I think it's late 80s, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, probably. So
the 80s are so present in that work. Like, that's what I love about that work. It's like the 80s is a character. Yeah, it's like this feeling in the work. It's so grounded, in that time.
Yeah, it's true. And the last phantom question, that is, ask yourself a question and give yourself an answer.
Ask myself a question and give myself an answer?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
What you want. It's really open. We had in the past episodes some really philosophical questions and some really easy one. So everything is okay.
Oh God, I don't know. Like, should it be something I know the answer to, or something like I don't know the answer to?
You have to answer, but you can answer what you want. You can also answer, I don't know. Yeah. It's an answer.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Let me think about something. I think, okay, here's something that people sort of ask me a lot. I feel like, obviously, it's 2025. It's like everyone wants to talk about AI and technology and digital technology. And I think for some, the photo book seems like such an antiquated form. It's like, ink on paper bound. And I don't know if people bring that up to you, Gabriele, but it's like, it just seems to people outside this community, it seems so strange, so outdated, And so I guess the question is like, why photography books? And I think that to me, the more digital the world becomes, like the more value I see in it, the more value I see in analog technologies and thinking about them and remembering like what they do well, what they don't do well, but what they do well and what they can teach us, and just having something, the incredible value of having something physical, of having an object and experiencing it versus absorbing everything through a screen or on a phone. But
also just the simple act of taking a book out from your bookshelf is, it's an action that requires time and the will. Like you will have to choose to dedicate that time to that book. And I think it's completely different from scrolling I don't know, an iPhone or something else, or so watching, because you have just that book in your hand and you need to sit down probably and to have quite good lights. So it's full of small decisions that force you to do it in a proper way. When you decide to dedicate time to that object, it's because you really want it. And I think it is just half of the thing.
Yeah, I think, you're right. And the duration, if you actually really take it seriously and look at it and spend time with it, it's like there's something almost meditative where it's like you've just sat with yourself, with your mind for a certain amount of time. And I feel like I do that less and less,
No, I think I think there are thousands of answers for these questions. Also, I love the fact that a photo book is going to be the same for years. Like it's going to be the same forever. Of course, it's going to change a bit. The paper is going to change. The contrast is going to change a bit. But in the end, it's going to be the same. What is going to change is you. That probably you are going to watch the book now and in, in 5 years, 10 years. And what you can get out of it in different moments of your life, I think it's an amazing resource that you have. And also the fact that you can bring a project at home, and also the fact that that object occupies space. You really wanted that object. Like we are, one of the biggest problem that we have right now is the space. But it's gonna be that I'm super glad to sacrifice for photo books. It's a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a beautiful episode, Eli.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed talking with you. And it's I love the podcast or the videos, and I love I've learned so much. So I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm really honored to have you here, and like this podcast give me the chance to speak with photographers that I love. I think it's really beautiful for me, and also to ask stuff that I want to ask.
Yeah.
And I'm here with my cat. I just forgot to close the door, so she's here. I don't know if you can hear the cat purring super loud.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, she's here. Okay, thank you so much, Eli.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Also, if you want to speak about the other projects, we can arrange that, and I would love to do it.
Yeah, and I'm going to reach out next time I'm in Italy, because I'd love to meet up in person.
Yeah, it's going to happen for sure. We're going to drink a super shitty coffee.
And then we'll go to the Netherlands.
Yeah, to try a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay, thank you so much, Eli. Thank you so much to everybody, and see you soon. Ciao, Eli.
Take care. Ciao.